We're now going to hear from Hannaneh, a JD candidate at the George Washington University Law School, who wants to share her story and the story of her father as one example of members of the Iranian American communities who are represented here today. Please welcome Hannaneh.
Hello, and thank you to have the opportunity to share my story with all of you. Like many of the brave people demonstrating against the regime in the streets of Iran, I too was not even alive at the time of the Iranian Revolution. In fact, I have never even lived in Iran. But the reign of Khomeini's terror has nevertheless haunted me my entire life. Ironically, I have what most would consider an unlikely set of parents that would choose to dedicate their lives and death, in the case of my father, to overthrowing the religious fascism ruling Iran. My father came from a blue-blooded family, members of Iran's aristocracy with leading roles under the Shah. He was sent to study in the United States, where he met my mother while studying at UC Berkeley. My mother is American, with roots in Scandinavia, but by any definition, born and raised an American. After completing their schooling, together they made the decision to move to Iran, where they later married, where my two older sisters were born, and where they remained for over 10 years until after the revolution, before ultimately returning to the U.S., where I would later be born. As is the story of so many others, the Khomeini regime murdered my father in 1988. I was only 5 years old at the time, but even 33 years later, that day is forever etched in my memory. And the suffering that my family endured following his death rests solely on the shoulders of the Khomeini regime. My father was a good man. He cared deeply about the fate of his homeland and about preserving human rights and women's rights. He loved his religion and was repulsed by the idea of fundamentalist clerics manipulating and distorting it in furtherance of evil. It is true that the example my parents set for me shaped my life in remarkable ways. But I am now myself mother to two daughters. And that is why I continue to stand here today, hand in hand with my brave brothers and sisters in the streets of Iran.